Robert, thank you very much for joining us today as we kind of focus on leadership. And we have thoughts on leadership, but also experiences, and we felt just based on our conversation, the idea of sharing the lessons learned in leadership. So much that I've learned from you and from others that I've been fortunate to be around. Wanted to kind of share that with listeners. So uh, tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll talk about our topic for the day.
Sure. Kenny, I appreciate this opportunity just to share. It has been a really true blessing for me to have met you and to work with you. You remind me much of myself. As I look in my mind's eye and look back at my upbringing, I was born in the concrete jungles of Birmingham, is what I say. I was born on the west side of town. Actually, was born in a little house, a little house over in Inslee. And the doctor laid me on my mother's stomach and said, "You have a little boy." He used an expletive there that we don't use anymore, but that was the nature of the world back in 1948 is when I was born. But as I grew up, I was not that athletic. I was not. I think I was a good student. I worked hard, but somehow I always gravitated to older gentlemen. In Sunday school, I had a Sunday school teacher by the name of Mr. Peterson, and then from Mr. Peterson, I went to Mr. Woodson. Now, I call these names, and these men are already gone, but they'll forever live because they taught me so much. The way that I make decisions early in my life are grounded on the foundation that these men built for me, and that was in the church. Mother sent me to church before we as a family went to church. My dad was baptized at the same time I was. I was a teenager, and all my siblings and I and my dad, my mother was the one who was very much instrumental in getting us to understand the need to understand that there was a creator. So our family grew, and our value systems were based on Judeo-Christian um, values. So having had that as a basis, and my dad didn't go to college, mom didn't go to college, but they gave it everything they could give. My dad was very good at doing things with his hands, so he taught me how to do plumbing. He taught me how to do build carpentry. He taught me all of those things, and because he taught me those, I gravitated toward uh, technology, mathematics, if you will. When I was in high school, I went to school at night to learn mechanical drafting, just so I would stay out of trouble and just do something to continue to grow my intellect. Went to Alabama A&M, majored in mechanical drafting and design technology, minored in mathematics. Uh, Enjoyed my life there, had a pivotal experience when I joined the fraternity. I became more extroverted. I was much more introverted, but it was a bringing me out. It was a crucible moment, a moment that I'll never forget. And that moment now, as I look back on it, prepared me for going into the world of business, where there was no other persons that looked like me that would give me the opportunity to engage them in a way that I could learn mentoring. I didn't have mentors, but as the Lord would have it, I teach Sunday school. So as the Lord would have it, there was always a ram in the bush. And George Howard, he's another gentleman that's passed away now. He was Caucasian. In fact, his son now is my internalist doctor. But George pulled me to the side. He said, "Robert, you're not going to go very far in this company unless you go back to school." I said, "Why would I need to do that? I have one BS degree. I mean, I got a family to run, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." He says, "No, I understand, but if you get an engineering degree, you can your life in this company would do well." Went back to UAB, got tough, quit. He found out I quit, and he offered to pay my way through school. And I said, "No, George, you can't do that. If you feel that strongly about it," went back. And needless to say, I graduated from UAB in '76 with a degree in engineering. And now his son is my doctor. But George, I owe a lot. Another moment in time when I feel that the Lord put someone else in my life, in my path, that caused me to be where I am. So for me, leadership is a function of those persons that you cross their path. And each one of those persons I may have mentioned to you, and others even beyond that, there were incremental nuggets that they dropped on me that caused me to be who I am today. And I have studied leadership. I believe I have been a student of leadership for years. For a while, Kenny, I thought you had to be born to be a leader. I really believe that. I think I was in a discussion at a MBA school or something, and I said, leaders are born. You can't train them. You can't make them. They're born. And I have come full circle. I absolutely believe that the traits and tenets of leadership can be taught if a person wants to learn leadership from the heart and not from the head.
That is it. I think we talked about before this call, and really kind of just across our relationship in terms of what leadership looks like. And in my world, from a healthcare standpoint, health and wellness is a journey. Life is a journey. But you've used those same words to describe leadership. And I still remember years ago having a particular challenge from a leadership standpoint, and talking to you about it, and the feedback that you gave wasn't, hey, go do this. It was really more asking questions. It centered around, how do you see this situation? Who owns? Who can take? Who's supposed to take ownership of the different aspects of this situation? And then from there, being confident in the decision moving forward. For example, terminating someone is never. You can look at it as a business decision.
Yes.
But I think long term, you need to value it as a people decision. For whatever reason. I think the way you manage it, the way you handle it, says a lot about your ability to lead. Because I think the tutelage and the learning that happened between you and I allowed me to manage transitioning employees from the organization that I led to wherever they ended up, but knowing that they could end up in those places, being better prepared to take on a leadership role, being better prepared to add value to that organization because of really how we handled that separation.
Yes. I'd like to make a comment on some phraseology, because words really matter. When you use the word terminate, I recall the first time I had to let someone go. I had to go home afterwards. It really, because behind that person's a family, that is a life, et cetera, et cetera. And so someone pulled me to the side, and I don't know who it was. They said, Robert, you should not feel so bad about it if you've done everything you could to enable them. And then if they don't change it, you got to stop the ship and let them off. But actually, people terminate themselves. I didn't terminate that person. That person just did not fit. And because they didn't fit, we needed to let them get off the ship so that the other persons on the ship could work and perform even better. So termination is not about what we do; it's what about others do to themselves.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in thinking in thinking through those things, and even thinking about that. The topic for our conversation today is curveballs.
Yeah.
And sometimes within an organization, a curveball may be your realization that that this isn't the place that you should be planted. Sometimes it's the realization that the business model that you spend a lot of time on and invested a lot of money in isn't the model that's going to take the company forward. In a book I was reading recently, we talked about Eastman Kodak. And so a young engineer brings a digital camera to leadership, and leadership, their stance was, well, wait a minute, Now people love film. People want their pictures on paper. They don't want digital photography. And what this young engineer was trying to help leadership see was what was going to happen 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And because going to or investing capital in digital media or digital photography would have blown up their business model at the time, they weren't prepared for that curveball. And so as a result, they stayed where they were. And so if we think about what the landscape is today, we've got the COVID-19 pandemic. That's a curveball in itself in terms of
Yeah.
businesses that were thriving and now have an option to pivot or to hold serve. And that's an interesting concept. So if we think about sudden change being curveballs, um, tell us a little bit about what your experience has been, or what your thought is on managing sudden change from a leadership standpoint.
Well, the interesting thing about the metaphor curveball comes obviously from baseball.
Mhm.
My dad, as I think about it, Kenny, my dad had a desire to help the boys in the community, and in the African American community in the '60s, the parks were pretty much limited, but there
Mhm.
were parks around, and so my dad formed a team. He called it the Robert Holmes Tigers. I remember it, and I was not that good. The coach's son was not that good, but I'm left hand. Uh,
Mhm.
and and he tried me pitching, and he tried me first base, and I had a natural curve. He said, "Well, why you keep throwing curveballs?" I said, "Because I don't know how to throw a straight ball." Well, the batter, when you're contemplating a batter, is at the bat, his intent is to hit the ball. And I talked to my grandson, who is a proficient baseball player. He has been playing baseball since he's 7 years old, and now he's playing at Shelton State. And he has studied the game. He is a student of the game, but yet he has the academic or the athletic ability to play the skill. That's so I called him. I said, "Grandson," I said, "what do you do when you get ready to get a curveball?" When you said, "Granddad," he said, "Granddaddy, what you have to do is you're expecting a fastball because that's really what you want. That is the ball that gives you the chance to exchange the maximum energy into the ball." And being the engineer that I am, I said, "Yeah, you want to hit it on the sweet spot?" "Yes." I said, "But that's the coefficient of restitution. So you want to hit that fastball." But he says, "Granddad, when the curveball comes, you don't have time to really think a lot. You just got to adjust and then take what you get. Either know when to swing at it or know when to let it go." So it's a decision-making process. So I think what has to happen in the game of life, using the sports metaphor, that you have to always understand that while you may be on one path that you see in your career life, that life or situations will throw you a curveball, and you don't have the time to stand back and say, "Wow, I wasn't expecting that." You just have to adjust, and you have to do that in a unique way. When I left college, I went to work for Alabama Power, and I wanted to be a professional employee. I was a drafter. That word now doesn't really exist now because they have CAD drawing, etc.
Right.
But what happened was life threw me a curveball because I was not ready for the discrimination that I experienced. It was pretty rough. I thought that once you get a degree and you go into the workplace, they say, "Okay, you're proficient." Oh boy, was that a curveball! And it didn't take me long to figure out what to do. And because of my faith, and because I had my father and my mother and all those people behind me, they said, "No, you just got to gut it out, son. Life is not fair. It's never going to be fair. It will throw you a curveball. You
Right.
just got to know how to react and make some adjustments."
Yeah. Now those are really, really good points in terms of, and I think it kind of leads me to the next point. So early career, you figure, okay, this is where I'm gonna go. This is my path. Um, so next question that really kind of fits or follows on that is what are the opportunities to develop as a leader in the midst of adversity?
Actually, leader does not necessarily mean that you have followers a lot of time. It is
Hmm.
a thought process. It is how do you respond to the adversity? I listen to Nick Saban a lot because in Nick's conversation is really a testimony to leadership. He'll talk about a team that has character. I've got to have somebody now who's ready to step up. I've got to have somebody ready to take on something else. It's about knowing that when you are in a situation, you need to be where your feet are. And that is a quote from him, by the way. That is, everything else should be shut out. The noise of life has to be shut out. And so what happens is there are people observing you. Everywhere you go in the world of business or in the world of sports, in order for you to move to the next level, it is based on a subjective call on how Kenny or Robert Holmes performed when they had adversity. And if they perform in a way that they see that that person has the potential to be a leader, then that's where it starts. If you look at one more point I'll make is when Jesus Christ was looking for disciples, he did not look for them to be what they were at that time. He was looking at them knowing what they would be.
Hmm.
And so as time went on, you began to see that Peter began as a very challenging gentleman, but at the end of the day, he became one of the quintessential leaders. So
Right.
when you talk about leadership, it is about now the traits and the behaviors that one begins to manifest before they have to lead people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is that is you talk about Nick Saban. I think process in terms of we tell people to think, and oftentimes we don't focus on the fact that we haven't shown them how to come up or how to get from point A to point B.
Mhm.
We just tell them to make a decision, make a choice, and
Right.
and we leave it at that. I think it's interesting. We was working with talking with an employee recently about uh, a decision that he was about to make, and we broke it down. And in breaking it down, I said, "Here's the point. I'm not going to tell you which decision to make. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to say, hey, this is right, this is wrong. We'll discuss it. But in discussing it, my hope is that if I am not here and when I am not here, you will make a decision.
Right.
And you will make a decision that we won't we can argue the decision or we can talk about the decision and its ramifications till the cows come home. But what is important is that I trust your logic.
Mhm.
Right. And so if we can develop that kind of rapport, and to develop that with an employee, you have to have some trust. Right. And so I think really what we'll kind of land our plane on is if we look at curveballs, we look at sudden change and adversity. And I love the quote, be where your feet are. Going pulling Nick Saban back in again, great teams. So what's your perspective on how adversity or how curveballs can cause a team to gel? How leaders may use that to build strong teams.
You know, Kitty, I think that life is difficult, but I think it's difficult by design.
Mhm.
And good coaches have a way of making sure that adversity develops character. So at the end of the day, when you're looking at a team itself, as long as the team is having everything go their way, you really don't know what kind of character they have because they'll fall apart when things don't go well. If the curveball comes, they're just going to back up and say, "I can't hit the ball." They will not try to adjust and know and understand that once you see your first curveball, you may strike out. But the second time, that's the time when you'll begin to understand that that's not like a fastball. It's about having the experience, and that adversity causes you to be better. Adversity it will come. First of all, it is not must come, but it will come. But the reality is, how do we respond to it based on the fact that we have had adversity in our life? It has been something that challenged us, and we have seen it as a way, not as a weakness, but as a strength builder. You teach strength building, and the way you do it is do it with resistance. You can't get strong unless you have a weight that pulls against you to build the muscle. When you talk about leadership muscle, character muscle, you got to have adversity.
I love it. Look, great points. We're going to continue this conversation a little bit later as we talk about company culture and what that looks like, regardless of the organization. So we'll stay. We'll look forward to that.
Absolutely.